So far, we have only looked at trinomials like this, where all the numbers are positive, right? This is positive, this is positive, this is positive, and we've only looked at ones that have x squared by itself. So now we're going to continue to look at ones that have x squared by itself, but let's throw some negatives in there. And we're going to start with not too bad, okay, where just this second term is negative. If the second term is negative, and the third term is positive. Okay, we're going to look at just this situation. Okay, so here's the first term, here's the second term, and here is the third term. Now, what if that second term is negative and the third term is still positive, like this? Here's an example. Then, what happens? How does this change? How does this change what we've been doing? Okay, because the rules stay the same, right? It still has to, we still need two numbers that add to this and multiply to this. Add to this, multiply to this. So now the two numbers, have to add to some number, right? A negative number. Okay, because they always have to add to this, right? We always add to the second term and multiply to the third term. So the two numbers that we need to think of now have to add to a negative, but they still multiply to a positive. So what kind of numbers add up to be negative and multiply to be positive? And here's the answer. The two numbers we think of must be two negative numbers. They must be two negative numbers. Why? Because let's say I have two negative numbers like -5 and -3. When I add them, -5 plus -3 is -8. When I multiply them though, negative times negative is positive, +15. So the only way that I would end up with something like this is if I multiplied together, right? If I multiplied together something like this, x minus 5, x minus 3, where it's two negative numbers. Okay, so let's take a look at a couple examples. But the thing is because we've already had this discussion about the signs, actually your work, the kind of hard part of your work is not going to change very much here. We're still going to just think of two numbers that add to one number and multiply to another number, and they're just going to happen to be negative here. So for example, if I have this, I'm still thinking of two numbers. Now this time they need to add to -12 and multiply to 11. But here's the thing, I already know it's going to be two negative numbers, right? I already know it's going to be a negative number and a negative number. So now I can kind of just forget that for a second and say, okay, I'm looking for two numbers that add to 12 and multiply to 11. Well, the only numbers that multiply to 11 are 11 and 1. So -11 and -1 are my two numbers. -11 plus -1 is -12, right? I have 11 holes in my boat, another hole in my boat, that's 12 holes in my boat. -11 times -1, that's negative times negative is positive, 11 times 1 is 11. Okay, so here's my answer. X minus 11, x minus 1. There it is. And I can check my work, right? Should I just check it really quick? X times x is x squared. X times -1 is -1x. -11 times x is -11x. -11 times -1 is +11. When I combine like terms, look what I get. Okay, so this was just me checking my answer. Let's do one more. X squared minus 11x plus 24. Okay, so I'm looking for two numbers that add to -11, and multiply to 24, right? Two numbers that add to -11 and multiply to 24. Okay, I know it's going to be two negative numbers. I already know that. I already know because Why do I know that? Because I noticed two numbers that multiply to a positive and add to a negative, it has to be two negative numbers. So now that I wrote this, I'm not even gonna think about it. I'm just gonna think of two numbers that multiply to 24 and add to 11. I think, 24, lots of numbers multiply to 24. I could do 1 times 24. Do those add to 11? No. 2 times 12. Do those add to 11? No. I could do 3 times 8. Do those add to 11? Oh, hey, they do. 3 plus 8 is 11. So x minus 3, x minus 8. Negative 3 and negative 8 multiply to 24 and add to negative 11.